For over 6 centuries, the Zarkith Empire had stretched its rule across the stars. Unchallenged and unbroken, its banners flying over thousands of systems and resource-rich planets that powered its unstoppable expansion. Among them was Veltraxis Prime, a jewel in their industrial crown, home to vast deposits of quantum aura, rare substance used in advanced energy reactors and faster-than-light travel cores. The Empire considered Veltraxis untouchable. Shield satellites circling the atmosphere, Ground 2 space planetary cannons lining the cliffs, orbital drone fleets constantly on patrol, and fortified bunkers built into the mountains. It was a world locked in iron. The Empire had turned it into a fortress. It's not because it was under threat, but because they believed no threat could ever come. That belief held until reports began arriving, strange sabotage in the mining sectors, silent blackouts in data relays, patrol drones vanishing without distress calls. At first, they blamed internal rebellion or pirates hiding in the asteroid belts. Minor uprisings were common on the edge of the Empire, and nothing ever lasted under the boot of their elite storm regiments. They doubled security, assigned their best tacticians, and sealed off spaceports. The Imperial High Command even reassured the Council of Thrones that nothing serious was happening. But deep inside the control towers of Veltraxis Prime, some commanders were beginning to feel something strange or presence they couldn't name. Something watching, testing, slipping through systems with impossible precision. One morning, long-range orbital scanners caught a brief distortion. An object entered the system without triggering the subspace gates. It didn't match any known transponder codes, didn't reply to hails, and wasn't on any official registry. The distortion disappeared before exact coordinates could be tracked, and the system went quiet again. But for the first time in generations, Zarkith warships in orbit received orders to go on full alert, not for rebellion, but for something unknown. Across briefing halls and command bunkers, commanders scoffed and laughed. After all, what civilization could pose a threat to Zarkith? Most of the outer galaxy was filled with scattered colonies, trade worlds, and primitive states. And humanity, according to Zarkith records, had long faded from importance. The archives described them as a divided, distant people who had never unified, who had disappeared into civil wars and forgotten wars centuries ago. They were a story, once daring explorers, now irrelevant. The few Zarkith historians who still studied old human conflicts called them stubborn, creative and reckless, but ultimately broken. No one had seen a human fleet in over 200 years. Some believed Earth itself no longer existed. And yet something was coming. Late one cycle, a listening post on the dark side of Veltraxis picked up a low pulse in deep space, a gravity echo. Faint and slow, like the breath of something, massive, moving through the void. It didn't behave like a comet or cruiser or subspace rift. It moved with silence and intent. The sensor teams adjusted frequencies, trying to triangulate its path. But every reading came back different, as if the object didn't exist in the same layer of space. Then, without warning, one of the outer shield satellites blinked off the grid. No explosion, no debris, just gonna like it had been lifted from existence. Trolls were dispatched immediately. Drones swept the area. Nothing was found, except a single data anomaly in the satellite's last recording. A silhouette, distant, sharp-edged, and blacker than space itself. Analysts dismissed it as static corruption. Commanders called it ghost data. But one junior technician, a cadet from the academy, stared at the image for hours. He enhanced it, filtered it, and cross-referenced it with the Imperial database. There was no match. But somewhere deep in restricted archives, a red tag lit a pan. Ancient file locked behind encryption from before the Empire's rise. Label read, Human Prototype Warship, do not activate. Alarms didn't go off. There was no official panic. But the silence across command posts became heavier. Something had arrived, something that didn't send warnings or ask for permission. No demands were made. No battles began. And yet, officers across the Veltraxis sector began moving more carefully, speaking in hushed tones, reviewing emergency protocols. They didn't know what to call it yet. No one had seen the full shape of it. But they all felt the same cold question rising in their minds. What if the humans weren't gone? What if they had never been broken? What if somewhere beyond the edge of known space, they had built something the galaxy wasn't ready for? And now, just outside the reach of the Empire's mighty guns, hidden beneath distortions and cloaked in silence, a warship watched its engines silent, its purpose clear, its captain waiting for the moment to strike. It had no flag, no name on any Imperial record, and no fear of the Empire's walls. It had come not to conquer, but to reclaim what was lost. And before long, Veltraxis Prime would learn a truth the Empire had forgotten: you can fortify a planet. But you must never miscount the will of a human coming for their own, without warning. A sharp ripple tore across the calm of subspace, and every scanner near Veltraxis Prime lit up with alarms. Orbiting stations detected a sudden breach in the outer layers of the system. No gate signature, no known jump pattern, just a clean rupture, as if space itself had been sliced open. Out of the void came a ship of black steel and perfect silence, its surface absorbing all light, shape impossible to define, sharp angles folding into smooth curves. A design unknown to every database the Empire possessed. The vessel hovered, motionless and unbothered, holding position far enough from the planet to seem harmless, yet close enough to cause unease. It did not transmit a name, did not identify its origin. It made no attempt to explain itself. Zarkith command staff, watching from their orbital control towers, grew restless. They cross-checked its structure with every known faction, no pirate clan, mercenary group, rogue trader, or alien fleet had ever built anything like this. Some thought it a malfunctioning relic. Others whispered of a ghost ship, yet many dismissed it as a bluffer, broken scout drone, or smuggler's trick using projection tech. In response, the Empire sent 3 Corvette-class warships to investigate. Fast, lightly armed, and perfect for interception. The lead ship moved in with scanners active and weapons on standby. But before even reaching visual range, all 3 vanished from the screens. No explosion, no debris, no mayday calls. One moment, they were approaching. The next, they were simply gone. The control towers froze. Technicians rechecked the feeds. Engineers looked for sensor glitches. Still nothing. 3 ships gone in seconds. The entire defense grid was moved to high alert. Thousands of soldiers were rushed into underground vaults. Shield satellites reoriented toward the black object. Missile silos locked on. But through it all, the strange ship remained exactly where it had arrived, still, patient, and utterly quiet. Inside the command halls of Veltraxis, fear began to grow, not from the ship's weapons, but from its refusal to act. There was something unsettling about its silence, something that made even experienced admirals feel like they were being watched by something far older and more focused than them. On board the ship itself, behind layers of folded armor and phase-dampening fields, sat Commander Rian Holt, a man with no nation, no flag, and no need for approval. He stood in the heart of the command deck, watching Veltraxis Prime on his display. Like a chess player observing a board he already understood. The room around him was dark, quiet, lit only by the pulsing lines of the ship's neural interface. His voice was low as he gave no commands. He didn't need to. The warship itself was alive in a way no Imperial machine could comprehend. Name was Oblivion's Edge, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had seen since the fall of Earth's final defense fleet 2 centuries ago. Built in secret during the last years of humanity's decline, it was the only working model of a class of vessels known as phasing cursed ships capable of folding light, hiding in gravitational shadows, erasing physical matter without leaving traces. The technology had been feared, then buried, then forgotten when Earth fell silent. No one believed the humans had finished one, but they had danned it, had survived. Rian had been raised by the last fleet engineers, trained in deep bunkers far beyond the core stars, far from the eyes of empires. He was not a soldier of conquest. He wasn't seeking revenge or glory. He was here on a mission, one that no database could explain. He had come for someone, deep beneath the surface of Veltraxis Prime. Buried inside an unmarked Imperial vault was the one thing the Empire had no right to take. Rion's face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of years spent in silence, hunting for this place, this planet, this moment. The disappearance of the corvettes wasn't an act of aggression, it was a test. He had warned them without speaking. He had shown them what the ship could do without causing harm. But if they pushed further, if they refused to understand, he would not hesitate to move again. Oblivion's Edge did not run on ordinary engines. It did not fight with ordinary weapons. It bent space, bent time, and operated on physics lost to even the Empire's greatest minds. The warship's AI bonded to Rion's thoughts and instincts, read his intent, and stood ready not to destroy the planet, but to pass through every layer of defense if necessary. Outside, the Imperial forces prepared countermeasures, deploying cruisers, adjusting shields, calling for reinforcements. But no one knew what they were truly facing. They thought they were dealing with a rogue craft, but they were wrong. They had dug too deep into a history they thought erased. And now, from the edge of their understanding, something had returned, not to threaten the galaxy, but to fulfill a promise made long ago. And for the first time in their long reign, the Empire began to feel something they thought extinct, doubt. Because when the void brings a ship that defies explanation, and its captain asks for nothing but silence, the only question left is what happens when it finally speaks. The Empire had always believed in strength through numbers, strategy through scale, and domination through overwhelming firepower. And when the black, silent warship refused to retreat, the commanders of Eltrax's Prime activated the full strength of their defense grid without hesitation. Shield satellites turned their emitters to ward the intruder. Planetary cannons locked coordinates. Drone fleets formed formation layers around the orbital perimeter, and thousands of soldiers readied their posts, confident that no single ship, no matter how advanced, could breach a fortress world prepared for total siege. But the Empire made one critical mistake. They counted ships, they counted weapons, they counted statistics and probabilities. But they didn't count on Oblivion's Edge. The moment the first energy volley fired toward it, the ship disappeared. Not through speed, but through folding space around itself like a shadow sliding between cracks. It reappeared inside the shielded perimeter, a place no enemy had ever reached. Without firing a single destructive weapon, it began its assault. Entire power grids blinked out across the northern hemisphere, not from explosions, but from silent overloads traced back to invisible pulses that passed through reinforced walls and armored circuits. Defense AI cores froze mid-operation, unable to track the ship or even register it on their visual feeds. Drones launched countermeasures, but they vanished seconds later, phased out of existence. Caught in a stream of folded light where sensors could not follow, command bunkers, heavily shielded beneath kilometers of rock, were teleported, lifted from the ground, and gently relocated into orbit. Their crews stunned and unharmed, staring out of shattered command windows into the void. Above their world, the Oblivion's Edge didn't bomb cities. It didn't reduce bases to rubble. It didn't need to. Its presence alone rewrote the battlefield. And those inside the Empire's ranks began to understand that they were not fighting a ship. They were standing before something designed to disable, not destroy. Something so advanced that it had no need to fire traditional weapons to win. Officers attempted escape in stealth ships and personal transports, but none succeeded. Escape routes were sealed before they launched. Jump gates flickered, glitched, and collapsed. Communications with Fleet Command were scrambled. It was as if the warship had anticipated every possible move before it even began. The Imperial Fleet, High General stationed at the surface fortress known as Black Core Bastion, shouted orders, demanded a counterattack, screamed at technicians to reboot systems and deploy backups, but his voice was lost in a sea of flickering screens and dead consoles. The control room went silent as one final broadcast came through, carried on an unknown frequency, spoken in a calm and human voice. You were warned to leave her. No further instructions followed. The message was simple, quiet, and terrifying in its confidence. Inside the Empire's command chain, confusion spread like wildfire. No one knew who her referred to. But the silence that followed the warning was heavier than the entire planet's defense grid. Survivors taken from captured bases later described the warship as something more than metal and systems. It felt like a presence, like something aware and watching. They spoke of cold light, pulsing like a heartbeat, of walls that seemed to shift shape when stared at too long, and of voices echoing softly inside their helmets, even when comms were dead. The Empire had always believed machines were tools controlled, calculated, predictable. But Oblivion's edge felt alive, not in a biological sense, but in something deeper, something ancient, something with purpose beyond logic. And that purpose was not conquest, it was a warning. Rian Holt, the commander at its helm, watched. Everything unfolds from his chair deep inside the ship's neural chamber, his hands resting calmly as his mind synchronized with the ship's thoughts. He wasn't angry. He wasn't here to punish. He was only doing what had to be done. For years, he had searched through forgotten star maps, followed encrypted trails left by the old Earth defense network, and traced the Empire's hidden labs, until he found Veltraxis Prime, the place where they had taken her, buried her deep beneath the mountains, hidden even from their own people. Most of the soldiers on this world had no idea. Commanders who did had been silenced long ago, but Rian knew. And now that the truth was so close, there was nothing the Empire could do to stop him. The reckoning had begun not to destroy Veltraxis, but to reveal what it was hiding. And even as the skies above the planet cleared, even as the last wave of drones fell silent, even as Empire ships stopped resisting and began retreating into orbit, Rian remained still, saying nothing more. He didn't need to. The warship had made its statement. And the Empire, once feared across galaxies, stood powerless before a ship they had never believed existed. Built by a people they had long forgotten. Somewhere beneath the frozen mountains of Veltraxis, untouched by the chaos above, sealed behind layers of reinforced alloy and ancient code, a chamber pulsed softly with quiet energy. Inside that chamber was the answer to the warning, the reason. For the silence the girl the Empire had taken, the secret they had sworn to bury. And now, the one they had taken her from had arrived, not with an army, but with a ghost ship and a will no wall could stand against. The Empire had fortified the planet. It counted everything: troops, guns, drones, bunkers, but they had counted wrong. 17 years ago, during one of the Empire's lesser-known border conflicts, a human colony located in a quiet system at the edge of mapped space was invaded, not for power or territory, but because of something the Empire's deep scan satellites had detected: an abnormal quantum energy spike radiating from a small child. Most of the colony was ignored, but the child was taken by a science vessel in complete secrecy. Her identity erased from official records, her existence known only to a handful of high-ranking officials. She was placed in stasis and transported to Veltraxis Prime, where she remained hidden beneath layers of shielding inside a laboratory buried under rock, ice, and military facilities. The scientists didn't know exactly what she was, but they knew she was important. The child's brain emitted quantum-level signals that echoed through subspace, patterns unlike anything seen before. She didn't dream like other children. She connected two machines, two pulses in the vacuum, two things not meant to be touched by human minds. They gave her a name that made her sound like an experiment, the Singularity Seed. But she had another name, one the Empire never discovered. Her name was Lena Holt. She was the younger sister of Rian Holt, and she had been missing since the day the Empire stole her. Rian never forgot. He had searched every system he could reach, followed rumors across fractured human colonies, and hacked into abandoned Imperial nodes just to find a trail. When the data finally pointed to Veltraxis Prime, he didn't come with armies or alliances. He came with a single warship that shouldn't have existed, powered by old Earth science, and bonded with his purpose. The Oblivion's edge had not just traveled with him, it had grown with him, learning his thoughts, his rage, his calm, and above all, his need to find her. As soon as the final defense systems of Veltraxis Prime fell silent, the AI inside the ship found something unexpected, a signal buried in the static, something small and familiar. It was weak, but it pulsed in rhythm with the ship's neural field, as if trying to answer. Without speaking, Rian walked to the central control column and placed his hand on the interface. His mind connected with the ship instantly, and the image of a frozen mountain range appeared, the source of the signal. Rian didn't hesitate. The Oblivion's edge descended slowly through the atmosphere, bypassing wrecked satellites and disabled towers. No resistance was left. The Empire had fled or fallen silent. Deduct. The great stronghold planet was now quiet, not ruined, but empty, as if waiting. The ship landed near a narrow canyon where no entrances were marked. But the ship's sensors found the hidden hatch, and Rian entered alone. The hallway beneath was lit by old lights humming faintly, and doors opened before him as if the base itself recognized him. At the heart of the complex, he found the chamber, cold and humming with soft blue light. Inside stood a stasis pod, sealed perfectly, untouched by time. And there, floating in suspended stillness, was the girl he remembered, older now, but unmistakably her. Her hair had grown faintly in stasis, and her face, though calm, showed the same quiet curiosity she once had as a child. Rian placed a hand on the glass, and the pod responded. It scanned his DNA, recognized him as her brother, and began the awakening sequence. As the systems hissed and the lights shifted, the rest of the planet changed with it. The warship, still hovering in the sky above, pulsed with new energy. Lena's mind, long dormant, but never truly unconscious, reached outbonding, not just with Rian, but with the ship itself. Her quantum signal wasn't just rare, it was the missing key. The final component the old engineers had once theorized could unify human-machine, consciousness on a level no empire could replicate. And now, with her awake, the Oblivion's edge evolved, without firing a single shot. It reached into the planetary defense systems and rewrote their command cores. Not destroying them, but locking them into permanent standby, frozen, inert. No longer under the Empire's control, cannons, satellites, and AI bunkers became relic stools, without purpose. Within moments, Veltrax's Prime was no longer an Imperial stronghold. It was just a planet with one ship in the sky and one girl rising from stasis. As Lena slowly opened her eyes, she saw her brother standing before her, no longer the frightened boy who had once tried to protect her, but a calm, steady figure with a purpose stronger than any weapon. She didn't speak at first. She just reached out her hand and he took it. Round them the chamber dimmed. The walls began to hum with new resonance, and the old, hidden systems that had once imprisoned her now followed her will. She had been taken by the Empire and used as a secret, but now she was awake, and the Empire had lost more than a fortress. They had lost control of something they never understood. Together, Rian and Lena walked back toward the surface, the warship waiting above like a guardian. No enemy pursued. No orders followed. The message had been delivered, and the warning had been fulfilled. The Empire had fortified the planet with everything they had, but they had forgotten the one thing they could never calculate: the heart of a human coming back for family. In the days following the fall of Veltrax's Prime, the Empire was silent not from peace, but from confusion and fear. Official records labeled the planet as lost due to internal systems failure, a lie, meant to hide what really happened. But the truth moved faster than data locks. Whispers spread through merchant ships and independent freighters, past encoded messages and shadow broadcasts, telling the story of a ship that came from nowhere, a vessel black as space that moved like a ghost and left behind no destruction, only silence. The name Oblivion's Edge was never spoken in public, but it lived in every conversation between commanders, traders, smugglers, and soldiers who had once believed the Empire was unbreakable. They spoke of a human warship, one that didn't attack to conquer, but to protect. Of a commander named Rian Holt, who arrived alone and walked through a fortress world just to bring his sister home. And of Lena Holt, a girl the Empire once called an experiment, but who awoke and bonded with the most advanced machine ever created, not to become a weapon, but to make sure no one could be used the way she had. After Veltraxis fell quiet, the Oblivion's Edge rose into orbit and vanished into deep space, leaving no signal behind. Rian didn't respond to messages. He didn't declare victory. He simply sent one final transmission short, clear, and impossible to ignore. It was addressed not to the Empire, but to the Council of Stars, the galaxy's oldest and most powerful alliance. The message said, "We don't want war, but we will never be counted out again." That single sentence, carried on a wide frequency, burst across neutral space, shook governments far beyond the Empire's borders. No demands followed, no threats. But something had changed. For centuries, humans were seen as broken, divided, and irrelevant. Now suddenly, they were remembered not for armies, not for colonies, but for one act that had shifted the balance. Of fear, from that day forward, defense analysts in every star nation added a new field to their threat assessments. Alongside fleet size, firepower, and shield strength, a quiet entry appeared. Human factor, unknown. No one knew where Rian and Lena had gone. Some believed they had returned to hidden human worlds, forgotten settlements scattered in the spiral arms. Others said the Oblivion's Edge had entered deep space in search of more like her lost humans. With untapped gifts, few even claimed the Warship was now alive in a way machines had never been, an echo of Earth's lost genius. Traveling the stars with a soul forged by purpose, wherever they were, their story became legend. It was told in whispers, then in stories, then in warnings. New captains would ask themselves before setting foot on a border world, what if the humans come? Fortresses were built stronger. Fleets were trained harder. But even in their caution, they knew there was no wall high enough, no fleet large enough, to stop something that wasn't built from anger, but from loyalty. Rian hadn't come for territory. He hadn't come to strike fear. He came for his sister. That was all. And somehow, that was enough to bring an empire to its knees. Over time, the empire's grip weakened, not because of rebellions or wars, but because its leaders no longer had the same certainty. They'd seen what it looked like when a myth stepped out of the shadows. And even as they tried to bury the truth, the fear remained that someone, somewhere, might build another ship like Oblivion's Edge. That another human, quiet and focused, might cross the stars for someone they loved. A ship of silence and precision, appearing where it shouldn't. Doing what others thought impossible, not through force, but through intent. The galaxy had many powerful civilizations, but only one had forgotten what purpose meant. They remembered. They remembered Earth not as a lost world, but as a people who once built wonders, fell into silence, and rose again for one of their own. Across star charts and deep archives, new maps began showing a shaded zone near the edge of known space, and possibly occupied. It was marked with a single warning: approach with respect, do not provoke. Humanity endures. The Empire, once the most confident force in the galaxy, learned its oldest lesson too late. Because in the end, you can count your soldiers, count your ships, and count your planets. But you must never count out a human when they're coming. For family, that truth carried on the winds of every forgotten star lane became something more than fear.